I'm Anakin, and welcome to the Horror Zone. I'll never forget the ski trip to Avalanche Ridge. It was supposed to be a fun getaway, a chance to unwind and enjoy the slopes with my friends. But what started as a thrilling adventure quickly turned into a nightmare that still haunts me. It was mid-January, and a group of us had planned the trip for weeks. There was Mark, the fearless leader, Jenny, the seasoned skier, Paul, always looking for a new thrill, and me, the cautious one of the bunch. Avalanche Ridge was known for its challenging runs and stunning scenery, tucked away in a remote part of the mountains. We arrived on a bright, clear morning. The sky was a perfect shade of blue, and the snow sparkled in the sunlight. The lodge was rustic and inviting, with a large fireplace that promised warmth after a day on the slopes. We checked in, eager to start our adventure. The first 2 days were perfect. We explored the main trails, pushing out limits and soaking in the breathtaking views. Each evening, we gathered around the fireplace, recounting our day's adventures over hot cocoa and laughter. On the third day, Mark suggested that we try a more secluded trail he had heard about, the Dead Man's Run. It wasn't on the official map, but Mark had read about it in an old skiing forum. It was supposed to be a thrilling ride, untouched and off the beaten path. We were very hesitant, but Mark's enthusiasm was contagious. We agreed to give it a shot. Early the next morning, we set out, leaving the familiar trails behind. The further we went, the quieter it became. The trees grew denser, and the snow seemed untouched, a perfect blanket of white. We finally reached the trailhead of Dead Man's Run. It was narrow and steep, the kind of run that promised both excitement and danger. We took a moment to gather ourselves before starting our descent. The first few minutes were exhilarating, the snow fresh and the slope challenging. But as we went deeper, the weather began to change. A heavy fog rolled in, obscuring our view. The temperature dropped rapidly, and the wind picked up, howling through the trees. Visibility was nearly zero, and we had to rely on our instincts to navigate the menacing path. We should have turned back, but the pride and adrenaline kept us going. Suddenly, I heard a shout from behind. I turned just in time to see Paul lose his footing and disappear into the fog. Panic set in as we called out his name, but there was no response. Mark took the lead, determined to fight Paul. We followed, our hearts pounding, but the fog made it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. The trail seemed to twist and turn, leading us deeper into the unknown. Hours passed, and there was still no sign of Paul. We were exhausted and freezing, but our hope dwindling with each passing minute. The fog showed no signs of lifting, and the whispers of doubt grew louder in my mind. And finally, we stumbled upon an old abandoned cabin. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years, but it offered some shelter from the biting cold. We huddled inside, our breaths visible in the frigid air. We knew we couldn't stay there forever, but we needed to regroup and figure out our next move. Just as we were starting to lose hope, we heard a faint noise outside. It was Paul, shivering and pale, but alive. He had somehow found his way back to the cabin, guided by instinct and sheer willpower. We were overjoyed and relieved, but Paul's eyes held a haunted look that made my blood run cold. As we huddled together for warmth, Paul told us what had happened. After falling, he had tried to find his way back, but the fog dazed him. He wandered for what felt like hours, the cold seeping into his bones. Just when he thought he couldn't go on, he saw a figure in the fog. An old man, dressed in tattered clothes. The man didn't speak, but motioned for Paul to follow. Too exhausted to question, Paul did as he was told. The man led him through the fog, eventually guiding him to the cabin. As Paul turned to thank him, the man disappeared into the mist. We listened in stunned silence, not sure of what to make of Paul's story. The next morning, the fog had lifted, and we managed to find our way back to the main trails. Back at the lodge, we told our story to the staff. They exchanged uneasy glances and told us about the legend of the Dead Man's Run. Years ago, an experienced skier had disappeared on that very trail. Despite extensive searches, his body was never found. Some say his spirit still roams the mountains, guiding lost skiers to safety. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, one thing is certain, we were lucky to have made it back alive. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that something otherworldly was watching over us on that mountain. Whenever I think of Avalanche Ridge, I remember the eerie fog, the abandoned cabin, and the mysterious figure that led Paul back to safety. It's a story I'll never forget, and a reminder of the thin lines between adventure and danger and the unforgiving wilderness. It started as a spontaneous road trip with friends, a chance to escape the city and explore the countryside. We packed our bags, loaded up the car, and set off on the winding roads lined with golden fields and dense forests. Hours passed as we laughed and shared stories, the sun setting behind us in a blaze of orange and red. That's when we stumbled upon it, a forgotten road, barely visible through overgrown grass and twisted branches. Intrigued by the mystery, we decided to follow the road, our headlights cutting through the darkness. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over us as the familiar landscape faded into shadows. The road led us deeper into the wilderness, far from any signs of civilization. Old rusted signs hinted at towns long abandoned, their names barely legible in the moonlight. Yet, we pressed on, drawn by the thrill of the unknown. And suddenly, the car sputtered and died, leaving us stranded in silence. Panic gripped us as we checked our phones. No signal, no GPS. We were truly alone in this forgotten corner of the world. With no other choice, we set out on foot, hoping to find help or shelter. The forest seemed to close in around us, whispering secrets of the past with every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs. That's when we saw the house, an ancient mansion looming in the distance, its windows dark and foreboding. Relief washed over us as we approached, desperate for refuge. But as we stepped inside, the air grew heavy with a presence, a lingering sadness that seeped into our bones. Dust-covered furniture stood frozen in time, portraits of stern-faced ancestors watching from the walls. In the heart of the mansion, we found a diary, a testament to a tragic family history filled with tales of loss and betrayal. Each page turned revealed more secrets. Each whisper of the wind seemed to echo the sorrow of those who once lived there. As the night wore on, strange things began to happen. Shadows moved on their own, footsteps echoed in empty halls, and cold drafts chilled us to the bone. It was as if the mansion itself was alive with the memories of its past inhabitants, unwilling to let us leave. With dawn came our chance to escape. We fled the mansion, running through the overgrown gardens and back to the road. The car miraculously started, and we drove away, leaving behind the haunted mansion and its chilling mysteries. To this day, we can still feel the weight of that night, a reminder that some roads are best left untraveled, and some secrets are better left buried in the shadows of the past.